why don't we get into the whole situation that people have been asking about in the chat here? And that, of course, is George R.R. Martin. How did he lie, Matt? What's going on? What are you talking about? What do you mean caught in 4K? All of these things are George. Well, it's not so much George himself, but it's lying via proxy, in my opinion. Okay, so lying via proxy, in my opinion, and that has everything to do with this particular post that came out today. This is from fandom.com, but George's agent had come out and talked a bit about what happened with Game of Thrones, with George R.R. Martin, with Dan and Dave, with HBO, and this is the highlights of it, saying that George begged HBO to make the show last 10 seasons, totaling 100 episodes, says the agent. That is something that I agree with, actually. I think that one is something that they should have done 100%. Cutting it down to 8 seasons in the way that they did, I think that they should have expanded. The seasons were definitely rushed in regards to like how quickly people traversed Westeros, obviously. But this middle one here, this is where we start getting into it, right? This is where it starts getting a little bit worrisome here. When they say that he's not told anyone who sits on the Iron Throne at the end of the book series, how in the fuck can you have a book series or have a television show that's an adaptation of a book series where the show creators, the showrunners, are not told who the fuck wins the Game of Thrones? You're asking them to do something by having 10 seasons, which, by the way, would have ended this year in 2021 because it started in 2011, and he still has not released Winds of Winter, which is absolutely going to tie into this third bit right here, saying that he started worrying the showrunners weren't following his template after season 5. He never released the book, and in the end of it, he has said point blank that whoever wins the Game of Thrones probably might be different than from what was on the show. And George started changing his tune after the backlash to the final 2 seasons started to happen. So the fact that he hasn't told anybody who sits on the Iron Throne automatically means that when he was talking with Dan and Dave, giving them the outlines for the final couple books so they could wrap up the series, because, you know, he had already missed his deadline by a large fucking margin. He failed to provide them with the information that they needed in order to come to a proper conclusion as put forward by the original author. This is not a Robert Jordan Wheel of Time situation where he died before the books were finished written. And even, hey, Robert Jordan knew that his time was up. Robert Jordan knew that he wasn't going to live, he was kind of on the decline. So they brought in Sanderson in order to finish it out, and Robert Jordan handpicked Sanderson and gave him all the notes and gave him all the information that he needed in order to finish the series for the fans. It's been, by the way, 10 years since the last Game of Thrones book came out, book 4. And George has absolutely yet to release or give a release window of when that book would be coming out. He said in 2019 that or maybe 2018, that if the book is done by 2020, that fans can literally come and arrest George Martin to get him to finish the book. He jokingly said that a couple of years ago. We're now almost in 2022. Winds of Winter is still nowhere near completion that we know of. Never mind the fact that there's still the 6th and final book in the Song of Ice and Fire series that has not even been talked about at all, because we're still waiting for the penultimate edition to come out. That is what I'm talking about when I say that George is lying. He's been lying for years. He's been deflecting for years. He's been shooing off responsibility for getting the story done. He comes out, he tells Dan and Dave where he's going to take the story. He's not done with it by the time the series ends. He's not happy with how the series ends. That's fine. A lot of other people weren't either, but he still failed to uphold his end of the bargain, being the progenitor of the series. But in the meantime, you might hear occasionally, oh, George R.R. Martin's got another story coming on the horizon, right? Or what about Elden Ring? From Software working with George R.R. Martin on this new fantasy game that, by the way, comes out in early 2022. Geez, that's kind of odd. George is working on a fantasy game that's going to be coming out before Winds of fucking Winter. That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm talking about. All right. Like, that's kind of the point. And RPK with $5 here says, thank you. Did you ever see the video of Martin asking Stephen King how he writes so many books? It's very interesting, and Martin should have taken his approach. I didn't see that, but but that's the whole thing, is that's kind of the whole point. It's like, Stephen King has been able to nail it. B here says, how many Stephen King books have been published in that time? How many Clive Cussler novels have been published in that time? And Clive Cussler's been deceased now for a couple of years, unfortunately. How many James Patterson novels have come out? Sue Grafton, I believe, passed away. How many novels did she put out in that time period? There's so many other authors who have put out books in that time period. There's literally zero excuse that George R.R. Martin should not have finished at least book 5 by now. And what does that tell you? That there's something ridiculously wrong with the scenario, and all the signs point to GRRM. But because people have this, in my mind, an irrational hatred towards Dan and Dave over the last couple of seasons of that show, which aren't as bad as you might think, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm gonna die on that fucking hill. They aren't perfect, but they're not as bad as everyone out there likes to make them out to be. Especially the Daenerys arc, people just simply weren't paying the fuck attention. That was laid the hell out. That pivotal moment where everything changed was absolutely laid out. If you watch, I don't even want to get into it. It's a whole freaking thing. But George R.R. Martin screwed the pooch on that one, and that's where my mind has been on it. So he's still full of shit. He is absolutely positively full of shit. And it's unfortunate that so many people out there are in this position of just going like, well, no, George, George, whatever. Stop defending the guy and start demanding that he finishes it, because that's the whole other side of this too. He got so caught up in the celebrity of it all, that he failed to uphold his end of the bargain, which was finishing the goddamned story. There's that, right? Apparently, okay. We got the video here from this. How long is it? All right. You know what? I don't want to go through the whole thing, but we'll give it a watch. Okay. We'll give the video a watch for a few, because I'm on the subject and I'm kind of riled up over it. So there's that. All right. Let's take a look here at Stephen King talking to George Martin about why Stephen King writes so fast.
George, we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. Is there anything that you've always wanted to ask me? Because, George, I will.
Yes, there is something I want to ask you.
All right.
How the fuck do you write so many books so fast?
He's not caught up being a celebrity.
I think, I've had a really good 6 months. I've written 3 chapters, and you've finished 3 books in that time.
Here's the thing, okay? There are books and there are books. The way that I work, I try to get out there and I try to get 6 pages a day. So with a book like End of Watch, and when I'm working, I work every day, 3-4 hours. And I try to get those 6 pages, and I try to get them fairly clean. So if the manuscript is, let's say, 360 pages long, that's basically 2 months' work. It's concentrated, but but that's assuming that it goes well.
And you do hit 6 pages a day?
I usually do.
You don't ever have a day where you sit down there and it's like constipation, and you write a sentence and you hate the sentence, and
okay.
you check your email and you wonder if you had any talent after all, and maybe you should have been a plumber. Don't you have days like that?
No, I mean, there's real life. I can be working away and something comes up, and you have to basically get up and you have to go to see the doctor, or you have to take somebody a care package, or you have to go to the post office, because whatever. But mostly I try to get the 6 pages in, although entropy tries to intervene. I did an event at Radio City Music Hall for charity with John Irving and Joe Rowling, and this was the time, J.K. Rowling, and this was
she's not going to get those applause anymore.
the 7th Harry Potter books. And I know that I've been very fortunate as a writer, and you've been terrifically fortunate as a writer. You worked for a long time, wrote a lot of good books, won a lot of awards, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, this crazy thing happens where all these books are suddenly New York Times bestsellers, and God knows it's deserved, but it's a sort of sudden thing. And here's the other thing, okay? People yell at you and say, we want the next book, we want the next book. They're like babies, we want the next book right away. I mean, it's a great thing to want that, but the pressure that you feel or I feel compared to that final Harry Potter book, you know, everybody wanted that, and she came to New York and she was nearly finished with it, and she'd agreed to do this event. And Jo was trying to do 3 things at once. She was going to do a vacation with her kids. She was going to finish the last 5 or 6 chapters of the 7th Harry Potter book, and she was going to do this event. And she showed up to do the sound check at Radio City Music Hall, and she was dressed like any housewife or mother or anyone who was on vacation. She had a shell top on and white clam digger pants and loafers or sandals or something, and her hair tied back in horsetails. And we were trying to talk about what we were going to do and everything. And the Scholastic Press publisher is pulling her aside and talking to her. And Jo was very polite. But when she came back and talked to me, she was really, really angry. And what she said was, they don't understand what we do they? And I said, how can they understand when we don't understand?
That's a good little video right there, and it's very true. It's absolutely very true. I think I agree with James here. It says, take serious notes, anyone writing this genre. Pay attention to how Stephen King does it. Six pages a day. You know, when I used to write screenplays, I would write for a couple hours. I'd give myself a couple hours, and I'd try to get through 10 pages. And, you know, and I'm a fast writer. There's nights where I'd crank out like 20 pages of script in a couple hours, but a lot of that is dialogue. And then I have to try to find a way to whittle it down and things like that, you know, and then also figure out like the format and the pacing and everything. A lot goes into writing. You have to lose yourself into it. You have to definitely cut out all distractions. And I think, honestly, I agree with Fourth here. George R.R. Martin is too busy getting Game of Thrones pussy. He doesn't care about the books now. He doesn't care about the books, which is why every time the show comes up, every time it comes up, how it ended, it's always that shifting the blame to somebody else. It's absolutely positively all about everyone except George R.R. Martin. And I really feel that is something people out there need to reconsider how they view the HBO series, because I'm sorry, the guy failed with his obligations, and I don't have any problem saying that, and I would absolutely 100% say it to his face, because I think he needs to hear it. But in the meantime, he won't listen to me because he's probably balls deep in that Game of Thrones pussy.